Okay, and presentation mode. So welcome everybody to Ibis and J release planning. Okay, for those of you online, if you're not speaking, please mute your line. Okay, so we'll go through some of the goals for planning as well as the Ibis schedule, and then through these slides that the contributors have put together, talk about what they're going to be delivering in Ibis. Okay, so again, its goal is to look ahead 2 releases and help alert people when there may be some shared interest so that they can connect. Also help us think about dependencies, understand what integration load that we might have in a coming release, getting us all on the same page, and providing context for sprint planning, at least here at ON.Lab where we do the sprints. This is the first cut at the Ibis schedule. It looks at having November 11th as a feature and integration complete. At ON.Lab, we'll run 3 sprints up till that time, and then a couple of small sprints after that to finish up the testing from all of the integration. Okay, and then we'll go into the RC build process, and we'll have the release in time for the holiday cheer. Okay. So a big part of what we're going to be doing over the next couple of releases is based on something called brigades, and I've asked David to go ahead and give us a little bit of a overview of what that is. So David, sure. Take it away.
And apologies if you've heard me say this before. I'll go through kind of the basics of it quickly, but as far as community goes, I mean, I'm a big believer on looking at what other open source projects have done successfully and learning from them and adopting where appropriate. So just doing some research, I was familiar with something that Code for America does, and they've been really successful with this model that they call the brigades, and it's a way that they organize groups of people in the community to deliver products that are relevant for them. Specifically, Code for America is around enabling better governance through technology, and so they create new tools that are used by local governments across the country through these brigades. And that's something that's been so successful, they've scaled it up to over 100 of brigades, I believe, are currently where they are right now. The model works so well for them. So that's something that I was suggesting that we try, and I've talked to many of you about it, and it seems like something that is a good fit for what we've done in the past and want to do going forward. So as you see here on the slides, we're proposing trying a pilot of the brigade effort in the rest of the year. Yeah, could you go to the next slide, please? So to that end, we're not talking about hundreds of these like Code for America has, but merely just a few. So you can see here at the top of the slide, we're talking about some initial brigades specifically around dynamic configuration, the new intent framework, deployments, virtualization, and the GUI. And in terms of a timeline, we started talking about this in August, picked the brigades, picked the brigade leaders, and started forming teams. And in September, we're hoping to have work weeks for each brigade here. And this is very timely because the first of the work weeks is happening as we speak. Luca, do you want to just say a quick word about what you're doing this week?
Sure. We have four guys from NCTU that they just arrived joining us at the office for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Right?
And we'll have about 10 more people coming next week at the office for the entire week, working with us on this. So
that's great. Thank you for organizing that. So that's something that all the brigades will be doing. This is important for a number of reasons. Getting people together in person is going to make a remote collaboration much more effective once everybody goes back to their homes. And also, each of these brigades need to fit into the overall ONOS vision. So it's nice to have them here because you can learn what they're doing. They can ask you questions, and it can all help fit together. So that will be happening over the next month or two. And then in November, the brigades will have a chance to meet again as part of the ONOS Build event in Paris, where we're going to do a couple things. One, take the output of today's meeting and share it with the community as a whole. What is the vision for ONOS going forward? And then the brigades fit in, because that's one of the ways we're accelerating that vision. Hopefully brigades are going to work as a way where we can really get the community together to make these things a reality. So at Build in November, here's the vision, and then here's how we're going to make the vision a reality. So brigades are really crucial to making that vision a reality. And then if you do the last slide. And then this is a pilot effort. We don't know what's going to work or what's not going to work, so the goal is to iterate on this going forward. But at least in terms of this pilot, we've identified a few challenges that we may face, and hopefully we'll work on solutions to these so we can make this process better going forward. But I'll quickly go through this, and if you have feedback about other challenges you're finding or considering, let us know. But finding the right people, I think, is going to be critical. Lucas had some success because he's worked with a number of people, but maybe in other brigades it's not so clear who the right people are for that. So finding the right people could be a challenge. One interesting thing that William Quiverger has just found, he was on a tour in Asia and was talking to community members there, and people are excited about that, but they didn't know exactly what they were saying yes to. So providing enough information to the community about what exactly this brigade is going to be doing and how it fits the overall picture, I think, can be a challenge that we need to work through. And then another one is providing enough space to brigade leaders so they can be successful. I think this is something that we need to invest time in, but if people are distracted with a bunch of other things on their plate, that could be a challenge. And then the next bullet about working efficiently when not everybody's in Menlo Park. That's one thing that we're trying to mitigate through by having people here for at least a week or two. Because one thing we've learned through the community survey and just kind of in practice is people, when they're here in the office, just have access to a lot of things they don't have when they're not in the office. So that can be difficult. We're trying to have community around the world help us, but if they can't be effective when they're not here, that's something to work through. And then lastly, handling dependencies between brigades. If we've got a lot of groups doing things and they aren't talking to each other, it might not all roll up into something coherent and a holistic whole. So that's something that we'll be working through. And Thomas is kind of mitigating that by being the brigade shepherd, if you will, kind of making sure that all the brigades are working, in a way that makes sense.
Give me crook.
That's right. So that was it. But if you have questions or comments, Bob.
Yeah. So, David, I guess I don't understand the difference between like a brigade and just a team, right? It seems like that's just put a team around a particular area. Can you sort of clarify, like,
Sure.
What's like if you have a project, focus team, like we have like an existing virtualization team. What's the difference between the existing virtualization team and the virtualization brigade?
For sure. I mean, to me, there's two reasons. I mean, we could have called it a team for sure. In my mind, a team, though, is something that's more on an org chart. I wanted to have a word that signified that it's not just something that ON.Lab is doing where they've decided to put staff together to work on a thing. So team to me is very kind of indicative of maybe in an organization you have a group of people working on something, and this is not what it is. It's a cross-community collaboration. So
but we're all part of the ONOS organization, right? I mean, in some sense, right?
No, of course.
So I don't specifically see the difference, but I seem to hear you saying that you like the idea of brigade because it's, from your perspective, it seems to indicate sort of a cross-functional team. Or
cross-organizational,
yeah, organizational in the sense of location or place of employment, right? Rather than open source project organization. So, I mean, I see this as to me, it just looks like a kind of a functional team within the open source project.
Sure.
The thing about open source project is it doesn't matter who writes your paycheck or even if you have one, or you could be a volunteer, right? But you're still part of the project, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm 100% with you. And we could have called it a team. You're right. I mean, I think the other benefit that I see with calling it brigade is it lends some urgency, at least to me. Like there's kind of a rallying. I mean, these we're picking critical things to the future of ONOS to build brigades around. So there is kind of a rallying effort that I think the brigades implies that a team doesn't.
So I have another question, David. It seems like we kind of had a documentation brigade kind of going.
Sure.
So maybe think about adding it to the list.
And that implies something else. I mean, I think the thing the thing that going forward, if the brigade model is successful, maybe the difference between a brigade and a team is there might, and again, this is something that we've learned from Code for America, there might be some support that goes along with being a brigade. If you're a brigade, maybe there's some budget that leads have to organize these work weeks, or maybe there's other sorts of things that go along with being an official brigade versus just an informal team.
Yeah, I don't know where that would magically come from, but it'd be great.
Yeah. And maybe we do decide to have a documentation brigade.
Yeah, absolutely. You could put some good goals out there and rally a few more people in the community and start driving towards that. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions about the brigade stuff?
Okay, good. Thank you, David.
Sure.
All right. I better go to full screen for this one here.
Yeah, I know, full of stuff. Yeah, this is a long-term plan of the deployment brigade. We have, for details, we have a wiki page, we have a backlog on Jira, and we have a filter that can let you see all the stories of this brigade. We have a mailing list. This is a first list, not still updated, of the first participants of the brigade. In bold, I don't know if you can see it, but are all the different organizations that are working with us today. So the goal is to create a software stack using ONOS. This stack should be deployed in networks around the world. Of course, all ONOS should be, in theory, deployed, but I put the focus on deployment because this is something more short-term, right? And not long-term projects. We want to deploy it soon. The stack should provide layer 0 to layer 3 connectivity to end users. This will happen integrated in many applications. Talking to different research networks around the world, we realized that they slightly want all the same thing. They have all the same goal. So the very basic is provide layer 2 and layer 3 connectivity with two applications running on top of the same ONOS. We should have to redesign proxy ARP, integrate at least SDN IP and VPLS over packet optical, introduce a bandwidth reservation mechanism in the intent framework, and this is what I'd like to achieve by Ibis. J-release, integrate MEF standards, which already exist into the carrier Ethernet app that is already inside ONOS, into VPLS, or VPLS into that app, doesn't matter. And let VPLS connect multiple eCore sites. This is a bigger story, but it's also in progress. And integrate an app that by default all the research network around the world use, called Bandwidth on Demand. Integrate this app with the rest of the stack. So this is the high-level picture. Again, all the details are on Jira and in the wiki page.
Questions on deployment?
Which wiki page are you talking about, Luca?
What?
Which wiki page are you talking about, Luca?
The first link.
This is the top.
Oh, great, got it.
Do you have the details of the MEF? What MEF services?
I'm working with that with Mark, Kostis, and Utah. So it's the same. They are doing. It's the same thing they did for Record, right? But also they're basically creating layer 2 VPNs, right? Which is exactly the same thing that everyone wants to do.
The class of service and all
Yeah.
that.
So I don't care either. This is true also for other applications. I don't care if we don't call it VPLS and we call it carrier Ethernet, as long as we merge together the features in an application that makes sense for everyone.
So Ollie is on another continent. Are you covering for him, or is somebody else covering for him?
I
'Cause I don't think he's online.
did not realize I needed to cover for him.
Yeah, so
We
he's
certainly
on.
can. I certainly can.
Well, if you can, otherwise I'll move on.
Well, so let me try to do this. So the virtual networking has been going on for a little bit, but it's going through a little bit of reset in order to a couple of things in order to respond to some of the feedback from the design review, and also clearly in order to give the members of the brigade some sort of a basically means to affect the design, not just basically feed towards the existing implementation. So the idea here will be to figure out how to proceed with the virtual networking, whether it's going to be continues to be a subsystem as it's currently being slated for, or whether or not this should have a bigger impact on the ONOS design, where the ONOS networking becomes a first-class citizen in a sense that all the other systems are built on top of the notion of virtual network. Then the goal of the brigade is also to come up with a design for the southbound boundary between the front and sort of the back end of the virtual network subsystem, in order to facilitate flow-based programming in addition to the original intent-based programming that was planned in the beginning. With the rationale for flow-based programming is to also pave the way to eventually be able to expose OpenFlow agent on top of the virtualized devices. And also there are some goals for modifying the front end design of the virtual networking subsystem. Right now, the service provides for manual embedding, upfront embedding of the virtual networks into the underlay, and the idea is to separate the binding between the definition of the network and embedding of the network at a later time. This way, it opens the possibility for potentially dynamic embedding algorithms to be developed. And so the goal is to set all of these designs in place as part of Ibis and embark on the initial implementation of the virtual network provider. That's for Ibis, and beyond that, the idea is to show that we can provide multiple different backends for the southbound backends for the virtual network mechanism, and then use this to integrate with OpenStack, OPNFV, and other mechanisms.
Good. Any questions?
Just a note, if you try to send to Brigade virtualization, it doesn't yet work.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the first time I see that others, but I can for sure create it.
Okay.
We will mostly put OVX code to the ONOS, just use the OVX.
It's going to be, no, it's not going to be port of OVX, but it's going to be using the similar principles as OVX that it uses, but it's not necessarily taking OVX and embedding inside the OpenFlow.
Some idea.
Yeah, there needs to be, it's more than OVX, because OVX is only OpenFlow today,
Yeah.
and we cannot be only OpenFlow.
So just question, clarification.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm
No worries.
here. My name is Ibis and I'm here to represent Huawei. One clarification is when you talk about network virtualization, you're primarily focusing on the data plane and connectivity services, correct?
No, opposite.
Or the layer 427, which
No, neither.
Yeah. It's to provide virtualized SDN networks.
It's
Today,
a control virtualization.
so this is more into the SDN implementation.
yes, yes.
Yes, virtual SDN networks.
So today, most virtual networks are implemented as basically just collection of hosts with some inherent L2 or 3 connectivity. That's kind of the OpenStack. Well, let's say call it the Nicira way of virtualizing at the edge, purely at the edge. Fabric remains classic. The intent here is to provide SDN networks which have topology, but which have no prescribed connectivity. You program the connectivity via SDN principles. So that's what that is.
Are you familiar with the SDNO, Open O? No.
Yep. What is it?
Okay. So that's exactly what they're trying to do. To create that layer is called SDNO or SDN controller
Mhm.
that you can basically interact with any orchestration, service orchestration layer, which is probably in ONOS that is way higher than what ONOS is focusing on. Yeah.
This is more not upwards, but this
Yeah,
is
it's
more downwards.
But the SDNO in OpenO, probably if you have time, you may want to have a look
Okay, thank you.
at SDNO.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, Patrick, let me, I'll do
Yes.
slides for you if you want to talk to the slides, or do you want?
Yeah. Yes. I can talk to the slides. I can see the slides. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So the information. So we already created the wiki in the ONOS, the brigade. Members, we basically the members from current teams. The one is the ONOS core team, as a store team, the YMS and the Yan UT's team, and the Layer 3 VPN team. Basically, we need help. I'm going to talk about this once in the help sessions. So the goals here looks like more goals. The one is on the southbound, we are going to build a service and vendors agnostic drivers. Which means when the new device is added, we just modify the driver's configuration files without the code changes. That is the goals. So in the southbound, the northbound, well, we basically build an application through the young models, provide the configuration interface to allow the user to do the install the configuration, remove and delete. So here's the southbound. The driver, in the core, we're going to build the store to save the application configurations. So basically from the demo perspective, the 1 and 2 is good enough. So we don't need the number 3. However, if that is the case, so the southbound and will bypass the cores. That is the things we don't want to see. So we need to add the number 3s. So here is the 3 goals we want to achieve by this project. Okay, the demo, specifically, we are going to use the Layer 3 VPN as the use case to demo the northbound, and we need the multi-vendors device for sure. Okay, so we want to show how easily the new device being added without the code changes. So we need the multi-vendors device to join this project. Okay, so the number 1 and the 3s, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the help needed. Okay, so basically we need 1 or 2 developers for the configuration stores, and 1 or 2 QA engineers. So I already put this requirement in the wiki, and the people can go there to see why we need so many people here. We also need the vendors from the community to join us to bring your device here and get your device model ready. And we can step by step to get you guys to integrate your device with the southbound device driver to make it work. So here is the help we required. Any questions so far? If not, we can move to the next page.
So,
Okay, one question.
yeah, so
okay.
I think there may be some real problems with goals 1 and 2. Problem with goal 1 is that usually when a new device comes on, it'll have different semantics, and how are you going to describe those semantics? Usually, the only way you can do that, usually anything that describes semantics is known as code. So I'm not sure that's really a practical idea. The other thing is that northbound, like using Yang as a configuration language, doesn't seem like a very sensible idea. Yang's not really intended for that. It doesn't really work well for that. So it doesn't seem like a particular, like something, it seems like you'll run into problems if you try to do that. So that doesn't seem like a good idea either. So I recommend just focusing on 3 because it seems like a sensible sensible goal that you won't run into as many problems.
Can you close to the microphones? I cannot hear the number one questions. What's your concerns about number one? The southbound?
Southbound, you'll run into trouble because of the semantics, and with the northbound, you'll run into trouble because Yang is just not a good configuration language. Those are basically problems with your two goals. So I'd recommend focusing on number 3.
I still don't get your question. So what's your concerns about the agnostic driver
I guess we'll talk about it.
architectures?
That's okay, Patrick.
So
It's like you can't hear me, so we'll talk later.
Yeah, Patrick, maybe you can catch up with Bob and hear some more detail on his thoughts there.
Yeah. I'll
yeah, sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay, page 2, Patrick.
Yeah, it's page 2. It's basically it's the plans. It's the plans. We have the multiple dependencies. Now you see we have dependencies on the layer 3 VPN application. We have so many other plans, right? So that we have the stored dependencies and network element. NE stand for the network element, layer 3 VPN applications. That we need the hook to the YMS. So the YMS need provide the interface and get those basic functionality works. So I already set this the put our requirement to the YMS wiki, and they're supposed to get that. So the Yan utis for time being, we already tried to use the Yan utis to build the IETF standard models. So far so good. I didn't see any new problems, new issues. So we are keep this one open. So the driver mechanism is new. It's a new component. We're going to form a team to build these ones. Here is the I-based plans. So for the J, so the J's visibility now so far to me is not is limited. So basically the idea is that we need the set up the new plans for J release based on the result of the Ibis. So I just put the 3 items in the J, but it's subject to change in the futures. So here is the plans. That's it.
Okay, good, thank you, Patrick.
Can you re-answer the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to talk to Bob offline. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Does that look right? Yep.
So the next brigade we're talking about is the northbound interface, intent domain brigade. For Ibis, the plan is to design, formalize, and validate some of the intent primitives, also to design and validate the intent domain API. So that'll be a big chunk of the initial half of this release. And then the latter half will be focused on developing at least 2 sample intent domain controllers and validating those APIs with some sample and example apps, as well as hopefully porting some of our existing apps over to the new API. So the plan for the end of Ibis would be to have some good sample code on both the south side and the north side. And then for the J release, the plan would be to move towards deployment readiness, produce a couple of deployment quality domain controllers, and continue to port existing apps over. So go to the next one. Also, the other important thing about that is proposal of the J name, Jaeger. But
Is that a bird? Yes, it is.
in North America. On the sort of integration dependency side, from the integration perspective, this is going to be developed largely in parallel to the existing intent framework. And then eventually we'd like to deprecate the existing intent framework, provide a shim for the existing intent framework API, We may also want to port some or all of the apps over. So that's going to be some additional work potentially for the J release. As far as the dependencies or dealing with dependencies, this brigade is actually going to be staggered a little bit off the deployment brigade. There's a number of changes that are happening both to the intents and the applications in the deployment brigade, and it's also an opportunity to converse with that brigade to validate and gather requirements. So eventually it would be nice if there could be some help from the deployment brigade moving the existing intent framework and applications over to the new one. So there's definitely a dependency there. We'll need to work on communication between the two. If you want to get involved, feel free to email me, Brian at ON.Lab. Hopefully we'll have a fancy email alias or group in the near future. But we're still in the formative phase of this brigade. It's, as I said, it's probably going to be a couple weeks staggered off the other ones. That's it.
This intent is based on the new intent framework.
Yeah, I sort of hesitate to call it the new intent framework. It's, I would say, maybe a refactoring or a redesign of the existing intent framework that is going to try to overcome some of the limitations with the initial one and incorporate some of the feedback we've learned over the past year or so.
Okay. That's also currently intent framework also only supported point to point, the pass setup. Can we do, other kind of stuff besides the the pass, setup?
Do you have a specific example?
Like we want to, to configure some device, and we want to just, this request from application.
Mm-hmm.
Before we in our intended framework, we only, to do some pass setup.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the network, But the application maybe have multiple different requests.
Mm-hmm.
For request, query the system status, the configure the device, top that kind of task. So currently, our intended framework can support this kind of task. So besides the pass setup.
Well, so I think the existing intent framework is primarily focused on network-centric connectivity.
Yeah, connectivity.
And that will be a big piece of the refactoring. If we want to talk about expanding the scope of the intent framework to include things like queue configuration or configuring microwave or Lambda ports or whatever, we could certainly talk about that. But that would be something, perhaps a discussion that we could include as part of the initial scoping, which will happen this month.
But we already do that, right? Somehow.
Yeah. We for optical stuff, and we do. We don't do queue configuration, but it's going to be an important part of resource isolation and management.
Yeah.
So there will be bits and pieces of configuration, but at least the tentative plan has been to focus that configuration and programming on connectivity or being connectivity centric. If we wanted to expand the scope more than that, we should talk about it.
Okay, we will talk about.
Okay. Other questions, Northbound? All right. Thanks, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for the GUI brigade, we're a small brigade so far. There's myself and two other folks in the community. As an overall goal, we just are generally wanting to incrementally improve the functionality of the web UI. And over the short term and long term, as you can see, we've got proposed deliverables. The big ticket item here is implementation of the region-aware topology view. And this is basically allowing hierarchical navigation of your topology. So in addition to that, we also want to improve the many of the table views so that row items can be selected and details of the selected item provided. There's also additional functionality that we can do in terms of the intent view, where you can
resubmit with withdrawn intents, purge withdrawn intents, and so on to kind of round out what you can do from the UI. Also, with the recent upgrade to the look and feel, we temporarily dropped the dark theme on the UI, but which we want to reinstate. So this is all in the next 2 to 3 months. Looking a little further out, we want to continue working on the region-aware topology view to reinstate the overlay mechanism, mainly the traffic overlay, but there are other applications that have made use of that mechanism too. We have plans for implementing a new view which will give you a visualization of how the partitions are configured on ONOS. We want to add keyboard navigation. So for example, if you're looking at a table view, then we would like up arrow, down arrow to behave as you would expect, selecting each previous or next row item, and so on. And then we also want to start looking at providing an index global search system. And by this I mean on the server to index objects that ONOS knows about, so that either from the GUI, the CLUI, or REST, you can put in for example, a partial string that might match an IP address or a MAC address or a serial number, and have, because it's indexed, it'll be a fast lookup, but basically return a set of results of items that are related to that thing. And as you provide more of the text, it'll obviously filter down to things that you may be interested in. So those are just kind of some of the ideas that we want to head forward with.
One question.
Sure.
I'm sure you're aware of the GUI tools from Canonical, like Juju, correct?
No, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I guess it would be nice if someone can have a look at the Juju related tools.
Okay.
Because that's where that is becoming almost a de facto standard. Maybe almost we should have a look.
Okay, so if you could provide a link perhaps to where we can further look at that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anything else? UI? No? All right, thanks, Simon. Okay, it's the most recent slide.
Yep.
Yep.
In this slide, I'm going to cover some of the proposed enhancements to ONOS core, primarily in support for some of the ongoing brigade teams, and also in general fixes and enhancements that we wanted to make to the core. So the bigger piece is the state management support for dynamic configuration brigade that Patrick briefly talked about. So the idea here is to add a distributed primitive called document tree that we will be using to maintain the state associated with dynamic configuration. We currently have a tree map store, tree map primitive, but upon some initial analysis, we found that some of the APIs are different, and therefore, for this to be efficient, we need a primitive which is more suited to manage state and the corresponding operations that we are expected to do on that. So it's pretty straightforward. It's just that we need something which is different from the current tree map. The second point I have here is for exploring and evaluating the need for sharding this configuration state. The initial plan for this document tree primitive is that the tree itself will not be sharded. It will be replicated across multiple nodes for high availability and so on. But the operations on this tree will be serialized, so there is no parallelization that you can get. The only way to get parallelization is to actually statically partition the tree itself. There are better ways to do it, but before we proceed to do any of those, I want to understand what the requirements are. At this point, I have no idea, what kind of operations or what kind of TPS this particular store needs to support. So before we do anything complicated, I need to understand that it is all worth it. Secondly, the current distributed floral store, even though it works, there are a bunch of things that I know are actually not ideal. Especially there are some failure scenarios where, depending on the order in which some nodes go down or things get restarted, we can lose flow state, and this is something that we need to fix. I have some ideas on how we can do that. I feel this is something that we should handle as part of Ibis. Um, the other one, it's probably a stretch goal. We should consider using the newly added work queue primitive for the intent processing workload. Right now, it is done in a somewhat ad hoc fashion. It works fine, but this one provides better guarantees and also stronger. It's a stronger primitive for this type of workload. So if we can get to it, that would be good in Ibis. Otherwise, this will be in the J release. The other piece is so Kafka and RabbitMQ. I think people who saw the demos for Hummingbird saw that people were able to demonstrate these features, but both these features are currently not clustering enabled, in the sense that if you enable this application on a cluster of ONOS nodes, you get duplicate messages, and that needs to be addressed. And the right way to do it is by providing native support for clustering for these apps. um, Again, I expect this work to be primarily driven by the people who have implemented this support. So any help that they will need from ONOS core team, I think that is what we can provide as in Ibis. And in J, I have included things like rolling upgrades, streaming support, and a few other things. These are things that we discussed when we did the planning for Hummingbird. But as far as Ibis is concerned, the big chunk of work is dynamic configuration, state management support. So that's all I have.
Questions on this? No? Okay. Thank you, Martin. Okay, John.
Okay. So this is kind of a mix of continual work on things we've already been working on, and planning and working on some of the new features that the brigades are bringing in. So first, there's two performance tests that we want to improve for stability and also visibility into where the test is spending the most amount of time. And then continue collaboration with BII and try to understand their test methodology and just work with them more. We also have kind of ad hoc test coverage of one of the three features, so we'd like to do a survey of what we're currently testing and what needs to be tested. And then expand our intent tests to include multiple tunnel types and also the new protected paths feature. And then I would like to sit down with the different brigade leaders and try to plan out, I guess, like a timeline for when these features will be implemented and how we can test them and come up with a plan for testing them. So my initial guess is most of the planning will be in I release, and in J release we'll see the tests be written. I'd also like to expand some of the vignette-based HA tests for ONOS. There have been a couple of requests for more features with those, and then in our test-on tests, I like to add some new distributed primitive tests for the HA suite, and then expand the SNIP tests for some new features that are coming in, and then add tests for the VPLS application. And then the last thing, I guess more community focused is we like to try to create a wiki page for how to report a bug, include with a list of things to include, and maybe some commands they can run to gather information, and then also try to get a Jira template. So when you select the issue type as bug, it'll pop up with some of this information, or a template with this information.
Cool.
That's it. Any questions?
Thanks, John.
Okay, so with the packet optical, we are basically doing these two things. One is the open ROADM support in the northbound side of things, but we are sort of blocked by the Young Utils issue, and we're hopefully that will be fixed within Ibis release so that we can sort of complete the northbound south of the open ROADM thing. The second item is the protection modeling. So we are planning to deploy the disaggregated transport equipment in entities' facilities, and the requirement is that we want to be able to configure the protection of those devices. So we are effectively doing the control plane sort of layering model. How do we model that in the ONOS model and so on? That design is in progress, and hopefully by the end of Ibis, we will have a more fully-fledged design, and by the next release, we will have something ready for deployment. That's basically the plan.
Any questions?
Yuta? Yeah, Yuta. Should anyone from the Yan Utis team help you on these issues?
I forgot the name of the person, but yeah, someone is responding to Mark's question, so someone is working on it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know the name of my head.
Okay. If it's beyond the bug fixing, I recommend you to go to the wiki. We create the requirements, the table. You can add your requirement there. They will definitely will give a quick response and the tracking record.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is one of the work where, from different point of view, we all interact together, right? It's, as we said, it's about a deployment. So, of course, the deployment brigade sit from another side. They do optical stuff, which they have to do, and it needs also the device configuration thing. So, yeah, here is where one of the things where all the brigade meet together to do a common work.
Any other questions? Alrighty. Thanks, Yuta. Okay, Hungtao.
Okay. Yeah, in this particular for the Ibis release, we will provide some partition for the RC VPN service. This application actually based on the Young model. Because the whole project completely depends on the Young model component. So here our plan maybe later maybe we will just do some minor change or minor adjustment. Here I just listed the project, the main component in the application. So we will provide the RC VPN application. This application will send the RC VPN request to ONOS, and also will provide the RC VPN application manager. This manager will monitor and manage all the RC VPN service from the application side, and also will provide the RC VPN network element, the device configure. That application also needed to interact with the driver and the YMS, and also push the configured data to the store. And also on the southbound side, we will provide some driver and behavior and use the net count to push the configured data to the device. Currently in our setup build environment, we will use the MPLS network and use a Huawei's device. But later we will come other guys, other vendor, they can use their device and just run this kind of application. This application is a sample demo to to tell the third party, the ONOS can support the RC VPN through this young model. So this is the main purpose for our application. So in the question, okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Patrick, are you gonna? Is this
Yeah, I don't think our guys is from the Indian team is online. So the Yan related, we have the three things, right? And the Yan tools and the YMS and the common driver framework. So we're okay if okay we put some things here, but it's depend on the other project. Currently, we identify the dependencies is the layer 3 VPN need talk to the YMS, and the ACTN project need talk to the YMS and the Yan tools, and also the open modem the device model has the dependencies on the Yan tools. So I asked the team to create the requirement, the wikis in under each of them. So I encourage the communities, if you have any requirement and want to add something features or something, find some issues, any comments, go to the wiki to add your comments there. We're going to track that ones. So the send the email is good, but we could lose the track. Now almost the email alias has a lot of the emails, right? So I strongly recommend the people's put your requirement to the wiki. Okay, I think the all these ones that's what I have. Any questions? New requirement? You can go to the wiki to add yours.
okay? All right, thanks, Patrick. Let's see, Hinson. Is Hinson? Where? The last place I looked, right?
Okay, for Sona,
You have to speak
It's
in
kind of tethered here.
for Sona, in the Ibis release, we are going to working on improving some existing features, including security group and not with the contract and not features provided by OBS 2.5 and pipeline also, and also improving the performance by caching the network space to the local store and replacing existing interface module to third-party libraries. And in the J deliverables, we are going to introduce new response interface for service orchestrator and also support containers. That's all.
Questions? Okay, thanks, Hinson. All right, John, you still with us?
Hello?
Hello, we hear you.
Yeah, yeah. So I will talk with my plans. So until member release, I finished implementing most of part of this control message and addresses, including serializer and the deserializer. So from Ibis release, I plan to implement following items. So first of all, I plan to support control message exchange with the real list router And to be more specific, I would like to use NetT4 to handle all the control message input and output, as NetT4 provide better performance compared to NetT3. And also, a list controller will be added to handle all the connection setup with the release router. And after finishing implementing the protocol layers, I plan to implement list provider and abstract list control message. And there will be several providers, including list device provider and the message provider. And as Thomas suggested, we should not expose this specific like northbound API to application layer. So for daily release, I plan to integrate this southbound interface with the flow objective to manage all these mapping informations. After that, all integration has been done, then I plan to implement a sample application to show a set of interesting use cases which use this southbound. That's all I have for today's meeting. And any question?
Questions for me? No? Okay.
Good morning, by the way.
Yeah, good morning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Iowa?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so ACTN for traffic engineered TE network, hierarchical control of TE networks. So that's the name, and the wiki page is listed on this slide. In the H release, we have managed to work together, collaborate with YMS and Young YouTube group to deliver the first set of ACTM functionalities, which includes the standard support for standard IETF topology models, as well as the basic function for multi-domain T topology management, and also a list of northbound and southbound provider and northbound applications. So in the I release, our plan is to continue to improve the support for topologies, for T topologies, and bug fixes, but also more importantly, to implement the support for T tunnels based on the standard IETF tunnel model. And this then includes the support implementation of a southbound T tunnel provider in combination with the existing T topology provider, as well as a northbound T tunnel application, again, along with the existing T topology application that provides the northbound interface a data store that can be exposed to external clients. Now, on the core function for ACTN, we will implement the multi-domain T tunnel manager for MDSC, multi-domain service coordinator, which allows us to set up end-to-end tunnels across multiple domains over a set of abstract T topologies. And also, along with that is a GUI to show the hierarchical T topology, abstract T topology, according to what the model is defined, and the relationships between the underlay and overlay T topology. And also from the same GUI, we will be able to implement end-to-end tunnel provisioning. So along with that will be a basic path computation service that are implemented over an abstract T topology, which allows the MDSC to compute end-to-end paths. And also, last item in there is to extend the T topology and tunnel database with the annotation extensions under development according to the agreement that we had, basically to add additional support into the annotation system to allow us to store and to pass the additional key data defined by the two models. So this is the list of things to do for I release. For the J release, the basic thing to do is to continuously improving the two subsystems topology and tunnel, and also make bug fixes as well as optimizing the performance. So hopefully by the time this release is completed, then the ONOS is well in a state to be used as a ACTM MDSC to perform to do all the demos and foundation of a commercial solution, something like that. So yeah, that's all from my end. Any comments?
So the work that you're doing in the UI and the work they're doing in the UI, are they similar, related?
I think that they're producing their own UI view. They actually don't have much detail on that. Thomas, you able to throw any light on that?
It sounds like there's both. There's scaling into it, right? And the ability to explode views of things, right? I just wonder if they can take advantage of it.
They might be able to take advantage of it. The only thing is this is intra-domain and that's inter-domain.
Mm-hmm.
But I think similar concepts could potentially be applied at the higher level, where regions, basically the imported topologies up at the higher level and sub-layouts are basically mapping to the individual control domains that are imported.
Yeah, sorry, it sounds like the voices are a little bit faded away. So I guess you are asking about the relationship of this GUI and the ONOS GUI, right?
Yeah, so there's work to go on to scale the ONOS GUI, and I was just wondering if any of that work was helpful to the work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, that's definitely helpful. But also as we discussed previously in the email thread, right? Actually, we had very good intention to actually make use of the ONOS GUI to do the work. It's just that today the topology show based on the model is encapsulated in a separate application, but we certainly wanted to merge it into the same GUI application on ONOS eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right.
Not from my end.
Okay. Thank you, Io.
Thank you.
Okay. Answer router. So who put this in? Jono, do you know who?
That's the tech manager. Yeah, so they brought on the call, but they were interested in taking the vRouter and running it in an IPv6 environment and verifying whether it works or not, and if not, looking at what needs to be fixed to make that work.
Okay.
So that would be good. It's good to be able to support IPv6 in these routing applications.
Did you say Tech Mahindra or is it Criterion?
Oh, this is Criterion. Oh, it seems they have overlap there. I wasn't aware of this. It looks like they're trying to look at the same thing.
Okay. Right. So we need to point them at each other. Right. Good. I think that's it. All right. That is all we have for today. Before we break up, is there anything anyone wants to add or additional questions?
I think I'm hoping over the next couple of releases we can get a better handle on what we want to deliver as far as documentation is concerned. I have a day job with Mininet, so I can't really spearhead that myself, but I see it as a big thing that is missing as far as saying what we want to do on the next release. And we can also think a little bit, probably also want to think a little bit more about development tools. So those are two things that I seem to be a little bit missing from the overall release planning. But hopefully we can get more into those as part of the sprint planning and think about what we want to do and where we want to go in those areas, because I think they're both really important. But maybe it's possible the brigade thing may work out in those areas as well. Think about it.
Yeah, I mean, we could try if you want to see if that model works. Sure, we can figure out.
We'll see how it goes with the existing brigades and see if that might make sense to adopt it, because it may be one of these kind of urgent areas that needs some attention, and so we may want to call attention to it.
Okay, good. Thanks, Bob. Sure. How about any other comments? Okay, all right. Good. Thanks, everyone.
That was quick.
Yeah.